The moment you've all been waiting for is finally here. Almost, anyway. This is the Penn State Wrestling Show. Greg Pickle, I don't know that I've heard more conversation about peaking at the right time than I have this week, but it is the week that Penn State Wrestling fans, and I don't think anyone more so than the Penn State Wrestling program, thinks about and prepares for more than any other weekend, any other week in the year, and that is the NCAA tournament. The postseason opportunity for another national championship is on the line starting on Thursday. So here we are on our Penn State Wrestling Show to preview all of that. So welcome to the show, Greg. Initial thoughts about Cale Sanderson's press conference on Monday, and then Tyler Kasak, Luke Lillidahl, and Carter Starocci, who spoke afterwards. Big picture takeaway from you about that event.
Yeah, they're ready to go. It's good to be with you. As always, T. Frank Nationals Week is here. The first session starts Thursday at noon on ESPN down in Philadelphia at the Wells Fargo Center. Penn State, from what we heard Monday at Rec Hall, is very happy with how things are going coming out of Big Tens. It was not by any means a perfect tournament, as we talked about on last week's show, but it was good to close to perfect for many of Penn State starters, and some other ones found some things to work on and learn from, and so they feel like they're in a good place. Of course, the other side of that is, what else would you expect them to say? But we've heard, if you go back through the years, we've heard a lot of similar refrains from Cale Sanderson and his wrestlers heading into this tournament that we heard on Monday, that they're ready to go, that it's up to each individual to decide if he wants to do the things necessary to win. And, and that's how Penn State typically talks before this tournament, where they go score a lot of points. In last year's case, set a tournament record for the most points at an NCAA wrestling championships. And so what we heard is what you would expect to hear. I guess we shouldn't go too much further without mentioning Josh Barr, injured left leg at the Big Ten championships. Cale Sanderson talked to Steve Jones on the Penn State Coaches Show last week, said that Barr was doing well and would be ready to go, ready to grapple, basically. When the Nationals start on Thursday. He said a very similar version of that this week. So, we'll see with Josh Barr, if there's any limitations, any kind of medical equipment that might be on his leg. Time will tell. We won't know that till Thursday. But so far, I think the conversation certainly feels a lot more positive in nature than it did with Carter Starocci a year ago. I think we all knew Carter Starocci was going to be on the mat.
You've got to wrestle.
Right. I can't say I had a ton of confidence in how that was going to go. And, it turns out basically he won a national title on one leg. But to me, I don't know. It doesn't sound, with Josh Barr, at least the impressions I've got so far, as severe as what Carter dealt with last year. So, again, we'll see. That could certainly change by the time we see him on Thursday. But I guess the most important thing is that the news has been as positive as Penn State fans could have hoped for so far, since Josh Barr suffered that injury at Big Tens, and ultimately we'll find out how impactful it is, if at all, here in just a couple days.
Yeah, so let's get into it then. We're going to preview all 10 weight classes on the way to predicting whether or not Penn State is going to win a national championship again this year. Spoiler alert, I think that's where Greg's going to land. But let's start at 125. Top-seeded Luke Lillidahl. He was able to pull that out with his victory at the Big Ten championship. So what do you see now for Lightning Luke in his freshman season here?
Yeah, tough 125-pound bracket this year, like almost any year. I mean, there's been times in the past where one wrestler towered above the rest in this 125-pound weight class. But this is a year where, very similar to last year, it feels like a number of guys could win this, including Luke Lillidahl. If you remember at this time a year ago, Braden Davis was a freshman going into his first NCAA tournament as a number one seed, fresh off of a Big Ten title, did not end up earning All-American status, finished a match shy of that. I don't think Luke Lillidahl follows a similar path. I think that he's wrestling as well as anyone in the country right now. You heard him on Monday, T. Frank. If you guys didn't see the video, you can go check it out at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com of the news conference he had with a couple teammates at Rec Hall. He's confident. He's ready to go. He's wrestling well. And you look at the bracket, I mean, he has Richie Figueroa of Arizona State on his side, the fifth-ranked wrestler in this tournament, but a guy who's been among the top in the weight class so far this year. Vincent Robinson, then from NC State, number 4. before. If things chalk out, those two would meet in a quarterfinal for presumably the right to face Lillidaw if he makes it to the semifinals as well. So Matt Ramos, who we talked about last week, who Luke Lillidaw handled decidedly in the Big Ten tournament, is the 2 seed on the bottom half, and he's a guy that I think most would have predicted to make the finals before Big Tens. Afterward, not sure if that's still a widely held opinion, but wide open field here, T. Frank, and I will give the outright victory in this weight class to Luke Lillidaw. I think he will go on to win, and he'll have some close matches along the way, no doubt, but I just like the way he's wrestling. I like what I saw at Big Tens. He learned a lot, and it seems most importantly, T. Frank, that he took what ailed him in some losses earlier this year and corrected those things and put those improvements on display at Big Tens. And I expect that to be the case again here at Nationals.
So starting out strong with a champion at 125, not a surprise given his ascent so far this year as a freshman, and how, as you mentioned, he's wrestling really well. And that conversation about peaking at the right time for a freshman is just how much experience can you get them by the time it really, really matters. And it seems like Lillidaw is turning that corner into what everyone expected him to be. Like, I find that interesting. Whenever we had the conversation about a supremely talented player in any sport, athlete in any sport, the time between how it takes to get up to speed to where you want them to be, if you're a fan, it's never 1-to-1. But with a guy like Luke Lillidaw, I feel like he shortened that curve pretty quickly throughout his freshman campaign. Braden Davis on the 133 side of things. What do you see here?
Yeah, so Kelsey Anderson had some pretty interesting comments. You can read the full version over at bluewhiteillustrated.com about Braden Davis on Monday before the national tournament. Basically said, I'll paraphrase, that he's been banged up most of the year and that he has not had a lot of good training stretches in terms of, it just kind of seems like it's been up and down with him. And Kelsey Anderson said that this has been his best stretch of training time of the year. I mean, again, on one hand, what else would you expect him to say? On the other hand, we saw at Big Ten some of what gives Braden Davis the potential to be an All-American, and we saw some of what has cost him matches in the past. So which version of Braden Davis is going to show up? Brutal draws the 8 seed at 133. He would face Lucas Bird, potentially the top seed at 133 in the quarters on Friday morning. And assuming he would lose that match like he did against Bird earlier this year, he would have to go back through the consolation bracket a few rounds to make it to the medal stand. For me, again, it's which Braden Davis shows up. If you think the one that we saw flashes of at times this year that can score points, that does not get himself caught in bad positions, that does not wait for his opponent to be the aggressor, if that Braden Davis shows up, there's no question he can be an All-American. If it's kind of half and half, probably not. I'll keep him in the top 8. I don't know where he falls in the top 8. I think he exits the championship bracket after that quarterfinal with Lucas Bird, and time will tell for there. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, looking at the bracket and looking at where he could fall into and who he could face in the consolation bracket, that he can get in the top 8, make the first podium of his career, and be an All-American. So not an easy road for him by any stretch of the imagination. I think if you were putting odds on which Penn State starter would not make the top 8 and be an All-American, I think Davis would obviously lead that list. Maybe one other guy, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, all told, I think he'll find a way into the top 8, but certainly I don't think he gets past Bird and continues into the championship bracket any further than that.
It's Penn State Wrestling Show. We're previewing the NCAA Championship coming up this weekend. If you're listening to the show on Wednesday when we release it, or if you're listening to before the championship brackets start on Thursday, please like the video, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, help us grow our content here on the wrestling side. We know that there's a rabid fan base of Penn State wrestlers, and you guys are here on a regular basis. We want to make sure everyone knows what Greg does over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and here on the YouTube channel. If you're listening on the podcast, you can like the video or you can interact with it. You can leave comments. All that stuff is super helpful. I feel like I'm always giving you homework, so I forget to do that to the end of the video. I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't love giving you homework because we're here to talk about wrestling, not to do a bunch of checklists. But as we run down 141, Bo Bartlett, what do you see happening here after maybe not exactly how they wanted it to go at the Big Ten Championship for Bartlett?
Yeah, so Bo Bartlett comes into this tournament looking to win a national title, which, of course, as we've talked about before, is something that he strived for quite some time. And so the question is, can he do it this year? And he's going to have to beat some familiar faces to do it. And, he's on the same side of the bracket as the number 2 seed, as Jesse Mendez, a familiar foe. I feel like that outside of Penn State wrestlers and people tied to the Penn State wrestling community, I feel like if you went back and looked all the way to October, the name we may have said on this show most beyond that is not a Penn State wrestler or connected person is Jesse Mendez. These guys have met quite a few times over the years, and certainly this season as well. If the seeds hold, these two would meet in the semifinals. And on the top half of things, you have the top seed on the top half of the bracket. If the bracket wants to load for me, Brock Hardy of Nebraska. Interesting road he may have to travel with Andrew Alrise of Northern Colorado, the 8 seed. That's a potential quarterfinal, brutal quarterfinal, potentially for Hardy. And so, to me, those four are the cream of the crop in this weight. And I think if you wrestled this tournament 10 times, you would get a handful of different winners, and who would come out on top the most, I don't know. But when I look at where this goes for Bo, I think certainly Penn State fans will be rooting as hard as they can for him to win a national title. Obviously, that goes without saying, and certainly his career has earned him the opportunity to finally reach that point. I think he beats Mendez in the semifinals, but I have him losing to Hardy in the finals. I just think that watching Bo over the years, can he do enough to win against those two type of opponents? If assuming the seeding works as expected, can he do enough to win against those two type of opponents in back-to-back matches? And he wins a lot of close matches, and that means a lot of coin flips, and we've talked about that at length. But Cale Sanderson said earlier this week, when he wants to score, he can score. Sometimes that seems true, and sometimes I think you have to question that, as many fans have. So I have him finishing second, but making the finals. And as the old saying goes, once you're in the game, anything can happen, and once you're in the finals, anything can happen, as we've seen in the past, good and bad, for Penn State. So that is where I have Bartlett ending in the 141-pound bracket.
All right. Before we get to the run, got Shane Van Ness at 149. So what do you see happening there?
Yeah. So he comes into. I got one thing I need to edit here a little bit later. Remind me to do that, T. Frank. He comes into this tournament in a kind of interesting spot. I really like Shane Van Ness, and there is no question he is capable of making noise, not just noise, but winning this tournament. He's a top seed here for a reason. He finds himself on the same side of a bracket with Ridge Lovett of Nebraska, who beat him by a major decision earlier this year. The question for me is, if, again, the seeds hold and Van Ness and Lovett meet in the semifinals, I don't think Van Ness loses to him again by a major decision. I'm going to need to see it happen to believe he beats him in that semifinal. So I have Van Ness's time in the championship bracket ending there. Again, would not shock me even a little bit if I end up being wrong and Van Ness finds himself in the finals. I have Caleb Henson of Virginia Tech ultimately winning this bracket at 149. And I think Van Ness ultimately will finish third, which would be a very good season for him. Not the obvious goal he had for himself at any point this year. Or his career. No one starts their wrestling career with hopes of finishing third at the Big Tens. But that's where I bracket him out to before this thing gets underway at 149.
All right, so now we're into it. Tyler Kasek, Mitchell Messenbrink, Levi Haynes, Carter Starocci. This is the run where Penn State usually makes a lot of their strides in any dual meet or tournament. So Kasek at 157. Is it what's the interesting thing here? And not to say that there aren't other great wrestlers, but it just feels like Kasek, Messenbrink, these guys have been so dominant this year that there's very little question here. So I guess, what are you looking at in terms of 157, 165 that's interesting for these two in the upcoming tournament?
Yeah, I can't remember when it was, but he kind of joked about the fact. Somebody asked him about getting poked in the head or bumped in the head in a news conference recently, and Tyler Kasek just kind of shook his head and said, yeah, it seems to happen a lot. And I think that's the only concern he has as it relates to getting to the final on his side of the bracket. The top seed at 157 would be something that re-agitates an issue that he's dealt with at times during the second half of the regular season. Didn't impact him at Big Tens, obviously. And so, but to me, that, and, any kind of injury, it goes without saying, that could go for any wrestler. But I see him making the finals, and he'll face Cornell's Meyer Shapiro there, who is a fantastic wrestler. I think if you look across the internet, I haven't done this yet, but I would be willing to bet maybe half of the pundits out there pick Shapiro to win that match and half pick Kasich to win that match. Flip a coin. I did a few times earlier. I landed with Kasich to win that match, hypothetical match, of course, and win the 157-pound title. But if that match comes to fruition, it will be a doozy. And so certainly no guarantee there. But I do have Kasich winning at 157. When it comes to Messenbrink, yeah, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time. I think we all know at this point, or if you're new to the sport, or you're just checking in because the finals are here, Mitchell Messenbrink leads the country in victories by technical fall. He has pretty much dominated everyone he's faced this year. Mikey Caliendo from Iowa was able to keep it close at the Big Ten tournament in the finals, but Messenbrink ultimately won that match. And look, someone's going to have to do something pretty impressive to knock Mitchell Messenbrink out of the championship bracket in this tournament. I don't think it happens. I think he wins his way to the finals and then wins there to take the title at 165. Then when you go to Levi Haynes, T. Frank, 174. An interesting weight class. Obviously, Levi Haynes of Penn State, a junior who won the 157-pound title a year ago, comes into this tournament as the 2 seed because Keegan O'Toole of Missouri beat him earlier this year back in December, and has been perfect ever since to keep that top spot. Dean Hamidi of Oklahoma State is on the same side of the bracket. I don't see anyone stopping Keegan O'Toole from getting to the finals on his side of the bracket. I'm sure there's somebody I'm overlooking or missing. I just don't see it. On the other side, if things hold out, Haynes would face Dean Hamidi of Oklahoma State in the finals. So that would be storylines time, obviously, when it comes to the David Taylor, Oklahoma State, Penn State thing. Yeah. So that would be fun for Friday night and certainly a lot of intrigue. I give Haynes an advantage in that match, so I do have him winning for a rematch with O'Toole of Missouri in the finals. Just give the slightest of a nod to Keegan O'Toole, though. So I think Levi Haynes finishes second at 174, dropping another close one to Keegan O'Toole. And that's what things should look like, or how I have things looking anyway, from 157 to 174.
197, Josh Barr, injury intrigue. What do you see from the 197? And how do you think this is going to play out?
Yeah, so let's cover him, and then we'll go back to Carter Starocci. But when it comes to Josh Barr, and I think actually let's end with Carter because I think there's a very good chance. Yeah, so I think we don't plan these things out ahead of time. We're just doing it on the fly. That's a good idea, T. Frank, because I think the tournament, it probably won't end that way, but you never know how the final seeding matches will go. Anyway, Josh Barr, like we talked about earlier in the show, everything that his Penn State has said is positive as it relates to his participation, and not just participation, but ability to wrestle to his strengths in this tournament. Again, we'll find out more on Thursday once these guys take the mat in Philadelphia. But you look at the seeding, Jacob Cardenas of Michigan, who Barr is 1-1 against this year, is the leader of this bracket, the top seed, of course, the Big Ten champ. Barr is the 4 seed at this point, which means those two could meet in the semifinals if the seeds hold. So that's your first question to figure out when you're trying to figure out this bracket is who wins that match. They've needed beyond regulation 7 minutes twice now this year to come up with a winner. Barr clipped Cardenas in the Bryce Jordan Center, and it was reversed at the Big Ten tournament. So then on the other side of the bracket, you have Stephen Buchanan of Iowa as the 3 seed, and AJ Ferrari Buchanan's the 2 seed, AJ Ferrari's the 3. To me, those 3, they're cream of the crop, those 4 in this tournament, in this field. So where does Josh Barr end up? And to me, I went back and forth with this for a while, but, he beat Cardenas late in front of a raucous crowd. He lost to him once at a neutral site, so I give that a little bit more weight, and I give Cardenas a semifinal win over Josh Barr. And I think that, Cardenas will face Buchanan of Iowa in the finals, and I give the title in this weight class to Buchanan of Iowa, and then I have Barr beating whoever it might be in the 3rd place match to take that honor sometime Saturday morning when they do the placing matches. So again, it goes without saying, it feels like in more years, in more weight classes than others compared to some other years, there's some more toss-ups for Penn State guys and some more various scenarios where, if Penn State wrestles the way it has in some semifinals in the past, they're going to end up with a lot more finalists than I have predicted so far. But you just never know. So that's where I have Barr finishing in 3rd. And again, making it to the finals, assuming things hold, and he faces Cardenas again in the semis, would not shock anyone.
All right, so then Greg Kirkfleet, I think storylines. We're leaving Kirkfleet and Starocci here for the end. I think from senior perspective and the conversations around these two, Greg Kirkfleet,
Yeah.
Gable Stevenson, that is assumed the rematch that we're all waiting for. I guess, how do you see the heavyweight bracket breaking out, and do you think Kirkfleet can get it done and win a national championship?
Yeah, so no one's stopping Gable on the top side of this bracket. He's the 1 seed. He will cruise to the finals. Maybe somebody will find some way to keep it close, but history suggests that probably won't be the case. Bottom side, Kirkfleet draws the 3 seed behind Wyatt Hendrickson of Oklahoma State. Extremely talented wrestler. The Nittany Lion has the only win in the series between them. He earned that victory back when Hendrickson was at Air Force. Of course, Hendrickson now under the tutelage of the David Taylor team at Oklahoma State. If that semifinal happens, it'll be a tremendous match. I'll give Kirkfleet the nod there, but Hendrickson is not a guy you want to be messing with at any point. He has been very good so far this season. He is undefeated. He is the deserving number 2 seed. He has beat a lot of talented dudes pretty handily. So I'll give Kirkfleet the nod there, maybe more so just because I am intrigued by one final shot for Kirkfleet to beat Gable. And so we'll see if that ends up being the case. You got to give Gable the edge, right? I mean, it's just until Greg or somebody unseats him, he is the guy, and he has won everything, and and oftentimes done it pretty easily, pretty handily. So I have him as a champ there. I'll make Kirkfleet the runner-up, saying he does make it to the finals, but again, he will have a tall task if things hold as expected in the semifinals just to get that opportunity.
So let's talk legacy here at the end. Carter Starocci, there was a lot of conversation during the press conference with both Starocci and with Cael Sanderson about being the first to ever get 5. And so, I don't know that it doesn't seem like pressure is going to be a part of the conversation of the history of the moment, but something nobody's ever done before. How do you view this? And is this an area where the conversation around the national championship is sewn up around the time that he's, in the finals, which I'm assuming at the very least, we're going to assume Carter Starocci's in the finals here.
Yes, no doubt about that. You look at this bracket, I don't really see anyone who could give him problems on his side of the bracket getting to the finals. He's either beat some of these guys already very handily and or has he's going to be facing guys that he just outclasses. So I see no doubt that he gets to the 184-pound finals, his 5th NCAA finals. That would be, of course, first at 184 after winning 4 174-pound titles. Who does he face on the other side? So Max McElney from Minnesota, freshman who took Starocci down at Big Tens. That was the first takedown. The Nittany Lions surrendered this year, and then Carter went on to beat him pretty handily. He's the 3 seed. And then Parker Kakaisian from Northern Iowa, another guy we've talked about before, who Carter topped en route to earning the number 1 seed, is on that side of the bracket as well. So those two, if the seeds hold, will meet in the finals. Look, it's almost like we talked about with Gable. You pick against Carter Starocci at your own peril. So I'm sure everyone else that is filling out a bracket or picking Carter Starocci to become the first 5-time NCAA champ. Like I said, I don't see really any speed bumps or anything like that along the way. Could find one in the finals, but he finds a way to win the biggest matches he always has, and he will again Saturday night in Philadelphia to close out his Penn State career.
Yeah. What do you assign to that in terms of importance of that? I find it curious. If the situation is a circumstance of COVID, but at the same time, somebody who's done something nobody's ever done before, you don't get that opportunity very often. So I guess, what's your perspective on that?
It's fascinating to talk about because I think Cael Sanderson put it, and again, you can go watch the full video here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel or over at bluewhiteillustrated.com. But, it's interesting because you can say that, and I think this is the way Cael Sanderson put it, correct me if I'm wrong, but, there might have been guys who were previous 4-timers, including himself, who could be a 5-timer if given the chance, but maybe not all of them would. And at the end of the day, the circumstances leading to this, Carter Starocci didn't create them. He created 4 wins before this one, and he now has a chance for a 5th. And so, it's something that I don't think will hopefully ever happen again. No, I don't think anyone will ever be in this situation unless they, change the rules. That's one thing I think that's being forgotten in this conversation, that if they would change the red shirt rule and just give you 5 years of eligibility, that would put this
Yeah.
conversation into a different light. And I think that day is coming. We've talked about this on the BWI live show football version. And I think that day might be coming one day across all sports. So it's significant. There's no question. Anytime you can do a first in any sport, especially one that's been competing at this level since like sometime in the late 1920s, it's impressive. And again, the circumstances are the reason why, and he did not create them, but he has a chance to go out and take advantage of them and become the first all 5-time national champ in college wrestling history. And like we just talked about, I expect him to do that. So very impressive, deserving of it, considering the way he's handled himself throughout his career. Now he has to go earn it in Philadelphia, which it would be shocking if he doesn't end up doing that.
Greg is, just like many of the Penn State fans, making the short trip from the region to Philadelphia for the championship this weekend. So make sure you follow along with his coverage. He's going to be there live to give you all the information, get the quotes, talk to the people, get some photos, I assume. I don't know.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff that he does whenever he's on location. So reward him with that, with a follow on social media at Greg Pickle. And of course, check it out at bluewhiteillustrated.com. I'm Thomas Rankar. This is Penn State Wrestling Show. Next time we talk, we're going to have an answer on whether or not Penn State is a national champion in wrestling and if they set any records along the way. Come back for that. We'll talk to you then.